Hello, my name is Oluwatimi. I'm continuing with my discussion on the increasing fatalism in America. Of course, it's a reversal from, the optimism that used to define America. I remember when I was growing up in Nigeria, I loved the movie Rocky, right? Rocky by Sylvester Stallone. And those movies, American movies back then, in the 80s, some of them were violent, but they had this optimistic theme, this theme of optimism, agency, winning against all odds. And maybe that's the challenge, this, because there's another aspect of America today that I realize, it's like the dysfunction porn, right? Dysfunction porn, this romanticization of when one says rags to riches story, um, it should there can be an unhealthy um, focus on that one story, like it's the only legitimate story, the rags to riches, that that's the only good story, going from grass to grace. Because at the same time, there's this classicide that's going on in America, this hatred of the rich or billionaires or whatever. You know, we have something going on, right? Again, this demonization, right, of people, not seeing people as people anymore, as humans, right? And, you know, a zero sum contest. And that's why um, people spiral into the murder suicides that we're seeing, right? We've been seeing, murder suicides, just overwhelming us. Murder suicides, murder suicides. Of course, I did an earlier video, explaining my shock at, reading about a murder suicide, a recent one this June I just read it this morning. So, it started off as a car chase, right? They described a car chase, a man chasing I don't know if she was his wife, but she was his baby mama, right? They had been domestically involved, right? They're domestic partners at some point. And so she was in a car with his children, she's the mother of his children. But this guy chased her, what you'd see in a movie, chased her. He eventually runs her off the road, and then he gets out and he kills her and then kills himself. He didn't kill the children, they were left untouched. And these were black people, right? There were black people in America. This happened in the DMV area in Virginia. This murder suicide is not restricted to black people, because, of course, in April, the world, was awakened to the horrific murder suicide of Virginia's former Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, who was a black American, and his wife, Dr. Serena Fairfax, right? Then there was the military guy in Louisiana, who killed about 7 of his own children. I think one of them survived or something. Shot 7 of his kids and then killed himself. Shot his baby mama. She survived, and then he took his own life. So it's been going on. I've done videos discussing these, but it's not limited to race, because if like a couple of weeks ago, there was there were several murder suicides. They were white people, right? A white guy kills his white wife, kills, was it 2 of their kids. So it's been going on. It's not limited to race. It's not defined by race. So there's this fatalism in America, that's a reversal from what America used to be. Americans used to be very optimistic, right? Things are going to get better, right? There was this optimism, um, and there was the agency, self-will. But now there's this increasing fatalism. The person who's suicidal, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not going to pretend to be one. I'm using reason. Now, somebody who takes his own life thinks there's no alternative. That's the end. And that's what I'm challenging. This uh, air tone of finality. It's now pervasive in America. And that's why we're seeing these desperate killings. And that's because of the mindset, probably because of the mindset Americans have taken on. Americans have now they've formulated this script that people don't make mistakes, that errors, mistakes are evil. Human beings, in reality, we learn through mistakes. And you can see it from in our school system, the classroom to prison pipeline, especially plaguing, affecting black kids, right? Black boys in America. School is a place where students are supposed to feel safe. They're supposed to learn. They're going to grow. The period of adolescence, that's a period when boys make mistakes. American schools, public schools, do not recognize these mistakes. There's this finality going on in American public schools where kids that are supposed to be learning and growing are transported from classroom to prison to destroy their lives, to take a completely tragic course. It's insane. Teachers, yes, I don't encourage teachers who prey on their children, but teachers who getting involved with their students, underage students, statutory rape, their lives are destroyed forever. Women who went, their objective was to teach their kids, and it disproportionately affects women. I don't know if it's the media that doesn't focus on the male predators, the male teachers who prey on their underage students, but there's this disproportionate reporting of female teachers preying on their male students, underage students, and we see it obviously. Their lives are destroyed once that happens. America, we don't have a situation now where things can be remedied. There's just again, tone of finality. That's it. Things are just final, and then destroy lives, like autothesis, right? Self-suicide, murder and then commit suicide. It's like that's the pattern in America now, and lies, an atmosphere, pervasive lying, because there's a fake life Americans live, the fake lives of being perfect, the zero-sum-ness of American life. Tunnel vision. Americans are predators. Americans have defined something, I don't know who defined it for them, where this mindset came from, that you are either a predator or a prey, right? There's no middle ground. And Americans want to be the predator. So they have that tunnel vision, focus on destroying any form of resistance, because Americans have to be the predators individually as well. If they're not predators, they'll be the prey. And it's no good. Life is not worth living as a prey, right? First of all, that dualism is false, right? That you're either a predator or a prey. That's not the world of human beings. We're a community, we're a society, we're higher than animals. But it's like, this is the mindset of Americans. And I notice, there are many philosophers in this world, but when you're watching movies or listening to social media, it's Machiavelli that Americans like to focus on. Machiavelli wasn't exactly a philosopher, he was a statesman, and he wrote a book, Prince, a terrible book, right? It posits the ends justifying the means. It admired the predator, right? A ruthless, unscrupulous ruler who lies, uses deception, who's immoral, has no moral values. Opium as a religion of the masses, and it expresses the need for a ruler to be deceptive, to use deception, lies, and that's what I guess it was the media, because it was the media that embraced it, and they propagate this to Americans, and Americans have adopted that, right? Hook, line, and sinker, that the way to live is to be Machiavellian, right? That's how you're a successful predator, and being a prey. If you're not a predator, you're the prey, and life is not worth living, and you have to kill and then kill yourselves. That's what's going on in America. This fatalism, that's like life is predetermined already. And once you see it going a certain way, you have no agency as a human being to alter it, to make things better. And so you see the suicidal mindset in America. Apart from Americans having access to guns, very violent. People are encouraged to become soldiers, to go into the military in America. But our military, their psychology, they're not well trained. I used to have this admiration of soldiers, of the military. But when you turn on the news, I just watched this Forensic Files, and I saw, in this episode anyway, of an ex-Marine who just randomly went to abduct a young girl. Was it Brianna Dennison? Abducted her, raped and murdered her. It's very common. I saw another one, somebody in the Navy or whatever in Japan. What was his name? Kenneth Shinzato. He adopted the name of his wife. He married a Japanese woman, and he was based in Japan. And he randomly stalked a Japanese lady he didn't know. He abducted her, kidnapped her, raped her, and he killed her. So there's a lot of violence. He said he joined the Navy, the military, because he had these murderous ideations, violent ideations. Apparently, maybe that's why many people join the military. There are people who join to be honorable, but there's something going on. There's something going on, and this violent mindsets. Americans, we need to focus more on being optimistic again, in developing our rational thinking, right, and learning to live with societies in community, and understanding life isn't final, right? We have this finalist, this fatalistic flaw right now, that everything is final and things only go in one way, and if it doesn't, you fake it, pretend, and if it doesn't turn out well, the only alternative is to take life and take your own life. So there's something, it's a terrible mix of Machiavellian dogma and fatalism, right? Fatalism and violence, right? That predator mindset, that if you're not a predator, you're a prey. The zero-sum nexus, right? Zero-sum relationship in America. It's either or. And you see it in our politics, how the other side is just demonized, and it's not a debate. There's no debate going on. Anybody on the other side You annihilate any form of resistance. You demonize, and you script everything, right? It's just, and what is shocking is the amount of increasing unintelligence going on. Our schools have failed. Our schools have failed. The workplace has failed. It's failing tremendously. And people are saying AI is replacing mankind or whatever. I mean, humanity or human beings in the workforce. The anti-intellectualism that underscores American society today. And just violence, right? This toxic combination of brawn, bullying, violence, guns, unthinking, right? They should throw away Machiavelli. Throw it away. It's not, it's just the notion that you use deception as a tool, lying, and the book Machiavelli, by the way, just focuses on acquiring and holding on power, using deceptive means, right? Using unscrupulous means. It's a cynical book. Not everybody is interested in power, right? Everything is not about power. And Americans, even the most singular, the most basic American is made to believe everything is a power relationship. There's a power dynamic in everything. That's not how life is. That's not true. That's not true. That's a simpleton's way of thinking. Again, our schools are failing. Our schools have become classroom to prison. A place where that doesn't engender the notion that, well, life is about making mistakes and learning from your mistakes, right? And improving, right? Mistakes make us better. Now, people are killed, destroyed for making mistakes instead of being allowed to grow, right? It's, I'm glad I didn't go to secondary school in America. Anyway, my name's Oluroti Mirosha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.